Hey YouTube, Joel Boy here with another bit of One Piece content for your enjoyment. This one is going to cover a potentially game-changing idea. And this is based off of pretty much a lot of theories that are going around in the community, put together in a way that I think that makes a ton of sense. I understand this video is going to be really long, but I think that it's a treat if you just watch the entire thing and don't get intimidated by its length. There was just too much to say. And so with this being said, there's one theory more than any other which really inspired this whole train of thought. And this is a theory that I did not come up with. I believe I heard it first from Brago in my stream the other day. Or maybe it wasn't Brago, but I definitely heard it from someplace else. So just keep that in mind. And so essentially, this theory revolves around the future role in the plot of the Tamatabako box. This box, which contained pills that would in the short term make you stronger and in the long term made you older, was lined with explosives, and then eventually it landed in the hands of Big Mom, where for the longest time we expected Big Mom to be the one to open this box. But now I honestly don't think that this seems likely. In fact, I didn't really think that this was particularly likely beforehand, which is why you never really saw me talk about it whatsoever in any of my theories. I was just confused. I knew that this box was important. I knew it had a role to play in the story, but I didn't know how, and now we have a much better idea based on a clue in chapter 838. And it's put simply that Big Mom will give this box either by accident or on purpose to the Vinsmoke family. And so the evidence that basically suggests this is that later today, as far as at the end of chapter 838, after it became morning and we got to Big Mom, later that day there was supposed to be an exchange of gifts between Big Mom and the Vinsmoke family. And so, given that I think that this Tamatabako box has to play a role in the story, there's no way that it gets skipped over. And I also do not believe that Big Mom herself would open this Tamatabako box either, given that it's now been several weeks since the time in which she received it. And honestly, it seems really strange for her to open a box, a part of the treasure of Fishman Island, during the wedding with the Vinsmokes, again, for herself. It just doesn't seem to add up to me. If she was to open up this box, I feel like it would have been immediately after receiving the treasure, and then not a couple weeks later in preparation for a wedding with the Vinsmoke family. However, if her plan actually is to give it as a gift to the Vinsmoke family, perceiving it as a valuable along with other Fishman Island treasure, then this would make a ton more sense. Giving treasure for a wedding makes a lot of sense to me. We also should keep in mind that Big Mom isn't particularly wealthy, and if she wants to give the Vinsmoke some treasure for the wedding, then I don't think that she would have a lot of options available. And so if the Vinsmokes receive this treasure during this exchange of gifts ceremony, then I do think it's very possible that they would choose to open up this box being curious as to what's inside. And if they choose to open up this box, it would explode, and there's really only one logical solution that would occur after this point in time, which is the Vinsmoke family would immediately assume that Big Mom and her family planted this bomb among the treasure as almost like a declaration of war. And so this makes a ton of sense to me. If you guys have been following my theories about sort of how I think the Whole Cake Island arc is going to play out, you'll know that I do not believe that this arc is going to be Big Mom versus Luffy. Well, I do think that it's going to occupy part of the arc, as we can already see since we're in the Seducing Woods and Straw Hats are currently fighting Big Mom and her subordinates. I think that overall by the end of the arc, the major conflict of this arc is not going to be the Straw Hats versus Big Mom. Similar to how Frankie was the initial antagonist of the Water 7 arc, but then later it was basically the plot moved to the point to where Frankie was actually ended up being some sort of ally, or actually just a legit ally, and then the CP9 and the world government became the main antagonist of that arc and then the preceding arc. I think that it's ultimately going to be the Vinsmokes versus Big Mom, and then also Luffy as well, somehow either teaming up with Big Mom or being a third party within this arc. And that ultimately, that Big Mom herself just seems too strong for the Straw Hats with what they brought to this island, too strong for them to take out. Whereas the Vinsmoke, their entire country has made it to Whole Cake Island, and they present a much more viable opponent for Big Mom if Big Mom were to fight anyone at all. And we also know that Sanji has some huge beef with his family. And specifically, it seems like also from the latest chapters, specifically with his two older brother, Ichiji and Niji. And so I think that there's an absolute guarantee that at some point in time, Sanji will face off against his brothers. And then again, the Straw Hats possess the Viva card of Big Mom given to them by Lola, given that they saved Lola. And so I think that this Viva card will in some way help the Straw Hats and the Big Mom Pirates come to some agreement during this arc. But right now, the biggest question that we have is that why would the Vinsmokes and the Big Mom family fight at all? It seems like this wedding has benefits for both parties. Big Mom seems really interested in the Vinsmoke tech, so much so that even if, she doesn't trust the Vinsmokes or has some ulterior plot against them, she's definitely led her subordinates to believe that this wedding is legitimate, that she legitimately wants to ally and then bring the Vinsmokes underneath her wing because of their tech. And then on the flip side, the Vinsmokes seem really interested in this wedding because they want Big Mom's help in conquering the North Blue. So there's pros for both parties, and so at some point in time, if this is actually going to be the legit conflict, then we need something to occur in order to cause and initiate this conflict. And I think this very well could be the exploding Tamatabako box that Big Mom somehow ends up giving to the Vinsmoke family, and which would basically insinuate a declaration of war between Big Mom and the Vinsmoke. And so I've already done a theory, and I think a lot of people in the community believe this theory, which also provides another possible explanation for how this would happen, which is that the Vinsmokes never really were interested in this marriage at all, but instead wanted to assassinate Big Mom. But I want to make this very clear. There are some huge holes in this theory that have been revealed in some of the latest chapters, which highly suggest that this may not be the case. While it is confirmed that Capone pretty much confirmed that Capone is planning something against Big Mom, right now our only real suggestion that the Vinsmokes might be is through Capone, which is that there's a possibility that Capone is endorsed by the Vinsmoke family. They're in some sort of alliance, and so through Capone, it could lead us to the conclusion that the Vinsmokes are planning something against Big Mom. But this does not have to be the case. Capone very possibly could be going solo, and if this was the case, then we would still need something to occur to cause conflict between the Vinsmokes and Big Mom. And there's a couple bits of evidence that really support this, which is that, first of all, Judge didn't want to give up any of his valuable sons, aka all of his other sons except for Sanji, to basically participate in this marriage and give them to, quote-unquote, that mad woman, or deranged woman. And so if the plan literally was to assassinate Big Mom all along, it wouldn't really matter which son was offered for the marriage, since the Vinsmokes never really planned to carry out that marriage in the first place. And so in this case, Sanji wouldn't be absolutely required in order for the Vinsmokes to achieve their goals, which suggests that they actually do want to carry out this marriage. And there's also a lot of small details which give me the impression that Judge really does want to go through with this marriage. So if Capone is acting on his own, and the Vinsmokes aren't in some alliance with him, and they're actually trying to get some sort of marriage done between themselves and Big Mom, then you would need some source of conflict, and I think that it's going to be this box, if the first scenario is not right. But now I want to bring up something related, and another thing that really just baffled me for the longest time that, I didn't really want to talk about because it doesn't add up with any of my thoughts going forward in the story, which is that, keep in mind that Jinbei knows that the fishman gave the Tamatabako box to Big Mom. And that was actually one of his jobs for returning to Big Mom, which was to, in essence, save Fishman Island and prevent Big Mom from opening this box, which then she could possibly perceive as a direct attack on her from Fishman Island. And so Jinbei has already been on Whole Cake Island for at least a couple days now, if not longer. And so given this, we would assume he's already given her a poneglyph. He's also already had a direct meeting with her as far as leaving her crew, and then we saw the roulette as far as that's concerned. So it just would honestly baffle me if Jinbei forgot about or didn't mention the fact that Fishman Island had accidentally given her a box that would explode and not warned her to not open the box. And so if Big Mom has been warned not to open the box, then she would never open the box. She would also never give that box on purpose to the Vinsmoke family. And so this sort of throws the idea that the Tomato box is important out the window, but as I said previously, it has to be important. It has to play a role, otherwise there's absolutely no reason for including it in the story whatsoever. And so how can we make sense of this? I think this is where Capone being a free agent might actually play a role in the story. He clearly has some plan against Big Mom. We can see when he's talking to Peckham's that Peckham says, "Don't underestimate Big Mom, it will basically be the end of you." And so Capone is planning something. And so then we go to this idea that Big Mom might actually give this box to the Vinsmokes, given that she wouldn't open it on her own. And we also know that Capone right now is within her circle. He's acting as her subordinate but has plans against her. I think there is a possibility that Capone ends up slipping this box into one of the gifts that Big Mom gives to the Vinsmoke family. And so this would be a greatly devious plan by Capone and incredibly ingenious if he knows that this box exists. Assuming that Jinbei told Big Mom not to open the box, I would assume that Big Mom would then give orders to her subordinates not to give this as a gift or include this as a gift, potentially with the Fishman Island other treasure that she received to the Vinsmoke family. But then Capone could sneak this back into the treasure, give it to the Vinsmoke family, and there would be really no direct evidence pointing to Capone having a role in doing this. If no one caught him doing it, then no one would assume immediately that Capone was the one responsible for it. There would be mass confusion. All of a sudden this bomb would go off, and there would be an all-out war between the Vinspokes and the Big Mom family. Meanwhile, Capone can sit back in the shadows and basically laugh to himself at what he caused. This would also explain why Capone would basically refused to allow Peckhams to let Sanji off. If Capone had some sort of plan in which he wanted to set the Vinspoke family and the Big Mom family against each other, then having Sanji participate and reach Whole Cake Island was vastly important. And if it was important, this totally explains all of Capone's motivation back in the Zou arc where we saw him. Without Sanji, there is no wedding. And then while the Vinsmokes and the Big Mom family are fighting, Capone could then come into the scene later on to finish off whoever ends up being on top, assuming that both of these parties almost completely annihilate each other. And so I know what comments are going to happen after I say this, which is something I've already seen. The Vinsmokes are just not strong enough to take on Big Mom, and even if they wanted to fight against the Yonko, they would just totally get massacred. And so again, I want to bring up a topic of another video that I had, which is that Big Mom has a sickness in which she goes mad and she's not in control of her actions. I think that if this were to happen around the same point in time in which the Vinspokes and the Big Mom family were to fight, this could allow the Vinsmokes to be able to compete with the Big Mom pirates. If Big Mom is crazy and literally attacking anyone in her path in order to procure the sweets that she desires, then Big Mom won't have any specific focus on the Vinsmoke family. We also know that it usually requires the Big Mom pirates in general to go to great lengths in order to lift the sickness from Big Mom. They need to find exactly what she wants and then give it to her. But if they're fighting against the Vinsmoke family in general, in this huge war that's taking place, then they won't easily be able to lift the sickness from Big Mom, and so therefore Big Mom would be on a rampage with really no easy way of lifting the sickness, and this could really allow for the Vinsmokes to have a bit of advantage to close the gap between themselves and the Yonko and her crew. And so while this happens, I think that the Straw Hats will end up helping out the Big Mom pirates due to the Viver card that they have of Lola. We can already see many of the Big Mom subordinates already going to the Straw Hats side. This starts with Pudding and Peckhams, and then will eventually lead to others as well. We can see that Nami currently has control over the homies, which would then also include Randolph. And so if the Big Mom subordinates in general come to understand that the Straw Hats saved Lola in the past, and that's the reason why they have this Viver card, then that might make them sort of lean towards adding the Straw Hats to their forces as they take on the Vinsmoke family, because they know that they had no plans of deceiving the Vinsmokes with this bomb, yet something has occurred and the Vinsmokes are now attacking them. And so why would the Straw Hats actually help the Big Mom Pirates? It seems like this sequence of events would also be the perfect scenario to allow the Straw Hats to take what they want, which is the Road Poneglyph and Sanji, and then sneak out while everyone else is distracted fighting each other. This is pretty much the perfect sequence of events to allow for something like this to happen. But I honestly just believe that Luffy isn't capable of doing this. Especially if he learns that this fight isn't actually meaningful. That these two people were set against each other by somebody else. Luffy's inherent natural feeling for justice, I think, would override his desire to just leave and take his advantage. And I also think that there's some possibility that the Straw Hats will have no choice but to enter into the conflict, not by their own choosing. Basically, they're there, everyone's fighting, and therefore they will eventually be forced to fight somebody or be challenged by somebody. And I think initially this could be both the Vinsmokes and the Big Mom Pirates. Additionally, I think this sequence of events also allows for something that we should all be expecting after this last chapter, if not before then, which is Sanji ending up taking on his older brothers Ichiji and Niji. But keep in mind that if this theory is true, then it's neither the Vinsmoke nor the Big Mom Pirates' fault that this event actually occurred in the first place. It would be Capone's fault. Capone would be the mastermind behind the carnage. And so during this all-out battle, how is the Straw Hats going to help out Big Mom and sort of be the heroes of the story? I think it's through Peckham's, which is that right now there's only one person who definitely knows that Capone is up to something. And it's also, potentially stated at this point in time that Peckham's knows exactly what Capone is planning, because it seems as though it's insinuated that Capone told Peckham something in order to potentially get Peckham's on his side. Capone seemed upset that Peckham's didn't end up agreeing with him in the first place, which again suggests that Peckham's knows exactly what Capone is planning. Also explains his words to Capone to not underestimate Big Mom. And so Capone then shot Peckham's because he didn't agree and didn't join forces with him. And so Capone assumes that Peckham's died, but I don't think that we should assume Peckham's died, that he will survive, and that if Peckham's did survive and then ends up encountering the Straw Hats again, if perhaps he was saved by Jimbei and the other Sun Pirates being thrown into the ocean, and then this information could lead to the Straw Hats, and then the Straw Hats would then realize that the person that they need to take out to settle this conflict is actually Capone. However, this theory still does have a couple unanswered questions, which is that both the Big Mom Pirates and Big Mom herself and the Vinsmokes sort of started this whole thing because they wanted to ally themselves together, and this needed Sanji. And so even if Luffy were to somehow get in the good graces of Big Mom and the Vinsmokes by revealing to them sort of who caused this initial conflict, that it was really based on nothing to begin with, then we should still expect that both of these groups would still want to get married, and therefore would still need Sanji, which would be counter to the Straw Hats leaving with Sanji. So I think given what we know about Big Mom would be my prime suspect for somebody who would give up on this particular marriage because of the debt that she owes to Straw Hat. If Straw Hat ends up saving her, specifically if she went on a rampage, and saving all of her people, and then in general defeating the person that needed defeating in this situation, which was Capone, then Big Mom strikes me as someone who would reward those who helped her. The same as sort of she approaches Jimbei with, well, since you've taken something from me, I'm going to take something from you. Since you've given something to me, I'm going to give something to you. This, in this case, would be Sanji. But would the Vinsmokes do the same? Here, I'm highly questioning this particular idea. The Vinsmokes need to be fleshed out more, that is for certain. But as of right now, and my impression of them, they wouldn't give two shits if the Straw Hats ended up helping them, because they still have their goal of conquering the North Blue, and this requires a marriage with the Big Mom Pirates, and specifically Sanji. And so the Vinsmokes might not give up on Sanji while Big Mom might. And so this could potentially finish off this arc with the Straw Hats versus the Vinsmokes after they take on Capone. And so given what we know about Big Mom right now, she seems to enjoy testing rookies and seeing what they're capable of doing. And so in this situation, I believe it's very possible that Big Mom would just allow for a fight between the Vinsmokes and the Straw Hats to see if the Straw Hats can protect what it is that they love, which is, in this case, Sanji. If they can protect their Nakama against the forces that wish to capture him. But yeah, guys, I've gone a lot more specific than I really initially planned on doing when I started this theory. And so, you know, obviously you have to take, especially what I said at the end, with a grain of salt, because there's just so much more that we need to know throughout the course of the arc to really be sure of any of these conclusions. But to be honest with you, I'm just kind of baffled that there doesn't seem to be really a lot of holes in my logic leading up to this point in time in my reasoning, which by itself is kind of a miracle. And it's also pretty amazing just how many of the major plot points are tied in and make sense given this theory. The Viver card of Big Mom. We have the Tama Tobacco box as well. Additionally, we have Capone and the reveal that he's planning something against Big Mom. And then also we have this foreshadowing that there's going to be a fight between the Vinsmokes, specifically the brothers, and then Sanji. Big Mom's sickness, and then Peckham's knowledge of what Capone was doing, and what will happen after Peckham's ends up getting knocked into the ocean. And then we also have a little bit of Big Mom, and seemingly her tendency, it's almost revealed at this point, her tendency to test young rookies and see if they can achieve their dreams. It's kind of amazing to me that this idea consists of all of these major points and then explains them in a reasonable manner. And so that's really why, more than any other reason, I'm excited to share this with you guys. But obviously, I'm just one person, and I'm limited as far as what I can potentially perceive and understand. So I want to hear what you guys think about it. Just let me know what you think, whether you agree or you disagree, and why, any additional evidence you might have. Just let me know what you think. Like the video if you like the video. I'd appreciate it if you subscribed. And as always, dudes, have a wonderful day.